So either one of the richest men in the world is fighting against the Yeerks, or is a Yeerk himself. But the question is, which is it? The Animorphs make their way back to the airport, and while they try to think of an alternative way to get back home, the only plan that would work is to once again morph fly. Jake is, of course, disturbed by the idea, but manages to convince everyone but Cassie that he's okay with this. Cassie pulls him aside and confronts him on the issue. Cassie looked at me and shook her head. "What is the matter with you? You don't have to do this. You don't have to prove how tough you are." "It's not a problem, Cassie. Thanks, but let it go, okay?" "Jake, you may have the others fooled, but not me. You're scared, and you have good reason to be scared. So what's the big deal?" I tried to walk away, but that felt wrong. I turned back to face her. "The big deal is I'm supposedly the leader of this little army." "So? So you're not supposed to be human?" "That's absolutely right. I'm not supposed to be human." She laughed uncertainly, like she wasn't sure if I was joking or not. "No one expects you to be Superman, Jake. You think the others won't respect you if you admit you're terrified of something?" "It's not about respect. It's not even about being scared. It's about letting fear tell you what to do." "If it's unreasonable fear, you have to get past it," Cassie said. "But there's a reason for this fear. You were nearly killed." I shook my head. "No, you're usually right, Cassie, but this time you're wrong. See, if I give in to fear, then that gives everyone permission to give in to fear, and we all have good reasons to be afraid. Pretty soon, we'd be totally paralyzed. We wouldn't be able to do anything because one of us might have some good reason to be scared." "We don't morph ants anymore because they scared all of us, but mostly Marco," Cassie pointed out. "We don't ever talk about morphing termites because of my problems with them. What's the difference?" "The difference is you all decided I was the leader," I said. "That's the difference. A leader may be just as weak or scared or doubtful as anyone else, but he isn't allowed to show it. People say they want leaders to be just like them, but I don't think so. People want leaders to act the way people wish they could act themselves. Marco and Rachel and Tobias and Axe don't want me to give them permission to be scared. They want me to help them to be brave." Cassie looked at me a long time, and I looked away, feeling uncomfortable. "We didn't do you any favor when we made you leader, did we?" Cassie asked. I forced a grim smile. "There's something else a leader doesn't do," I said. "Complain about being a leader." "We did pick the right person, though," she said. Once again I started to walk away, but Cassie grabbed my arm. "Look, maybe you're right, but I'll bet even great generals or presidents or whatever have friends they can be honest with. People who would never lose faith in them, no matter what." I had the strongest desire to burst out crying right then. I also had a desire to hug Cassie really hard. I didn't do either. "Come on," I said. "The others are waiting." Finally, we get some solid character moments with Jake. I've expressed before how bizarre it is that every one of our protagonists, including the fucking alien, have had moments of introspection like this, but it took 4 Jake-narrated books for him to finally get something. To break it down one more time, number 1, The Invasion, was focused on establishing the conflict, so gets a pass. But number 6, The Capture, promised great character development, and then decided to spend its time shopping and playing basketball. And number 11, The Forgotten, never gave itself any time to breathe. This book clicks more into the classic style most of the Animorph books are written in, and it's very much needed. Though I find it interesting that Jake is more shaken up by being so close to death than by actually dying. The Animorphs make it home okay, and Jake is given the task of researching Joba Fenestra, which, when you say his name out loud, makes him sound less like an internet entrepreneur and more like a weed whacker spokesman. However, Jake gets roped into a family evening and doesn't get around to it. The next morning, the Animorphs meet up and try to figure out exactly what to do. They need to both investigate Joe Bob and see what they can do about Gump, who thankfully lives nearby. But it's Sunday, and they can only do one of those today. Cassie points out that Gump may be in immediate danger, but Marco counters with the fact that they can approach Gump any day after school, while they'd need all day to scope out Joe Bob. The decision falls on Jake, who decides that Joe Bob is the bigger issue, but he can't help but feel he should have gone the other way. Thankfully, Joe Bob's mansion is bird distance from where the Animorphs live, so Marco can rub food all over himself all he wants without fear of getting swatted. They arrive there, and Fort Knox has laxer security than this place. 3 layers of fencing, armed guards, attack dogs, the works. Still, that's not an issue when you're a bird, right? The Animorphs circle the place until they find an open window, and Rachel flies in first. But when she passes through the window frame, she gets shocked and lands unconscious inside. The alarms go off, and the Animorphs panic and try to fly somewhere safe, but the guards start taking pot shots at them. Axe takes a bullet and hits the dirt, but he's still alive. The Animorphs try to get to him, but the dogs grab him and take him away. Jake, Cassie, Marco, and Tobias haul ass out of there and regroup on top of a Wendy's. They're all totally panicked and start saying some really dumb things. "Didn't any of this show up when you researched this lunatic's mansion?" Marco demanded of me. Marco, why would the internet have detailed schematics of Joe Bob's defense plan? Where on the internet today could you find specific details like bug zappers in the window frames, let alone the internet of 1998? According to K.A. Applegate, you would have better luck finding that info in a Barnes & Noble. Did I miss something? Is there a news group for breaking into the homes of rich people? "They aren't controllers," I said, suddenly absolutely sure. Any time we've ever gone after the Yeerks, they may have used a lot of human controllers, but backing them up was always Hork-Bajir. No Hork-Bajir. And everyone used guns. Plain, old, everyday guns. And dogs. The Yeerks wouldn't use dogs. Jake, the mansion is in plain sight of the public. I really don't think the Yeerks would have alien lizards and guys with laser guns prancing around in that situation. And just who wrote the rule that the Yeerks don't use dogs? They use hammerhead sharks. I don't think they're against using a Rottweiler on occasion. Anyway, the situation is grim. Assuming they're still alive, both Rachel and Axe are most certainly still in Morph, which puts the rest of the Animorphs on a time limit to save them, so sneaking into the base is out of the question. They'll need to hit it hard. Jake flies to the gardens and acquires Rhino. I mean a rhinoceros. The Animorphs return to Joe Bob's place, and before you can say, "Gore! Gore! Gore!" Jake busts a hole through the fences and into the mansion, and the guards are bewildered enough for the Animorphs to find Joe Bob Finestra's location. They morph into battle mode and confront him. And so we learn the story of Joe Bob Finestra. He is in fact a controller, but not exactly on the side of the Yeerks. His Yeerk name is Esplin9466, the double six indicating that he is a twin, and his twin sibling is none other than Visor 3. Yeesh, even in books where he doesn't show up, Visor 3 is everywhere. In Yeerk culture, one twin is the greater and one is the lesser, meaning that Visor 3 got the Game Boy for Christmas while Joe Bob got the Tiger Electronics. There's no rule that says twins can't work as equals, but, well, Visor 3 is a colossal dick that will cut your head off if you tell him that bugs exist. So Visor 3 made sure his sibling got the lowest host body on the food chain, a lowly programmer named Joe Bob. However, Esplin9466 wouldn't take it lying down, so he became partners with his host body, and together they created Web Access America, which not only made them rich, but also gave the Yeerk access to more information on humans than any other Yeerk around, making him an important player in the Yeerk invasion. This naturally pissed Visor 3 off, so he cut off Joe Bob from the Kandrona. But ever the resourceful Yeerk, Joe Bob discovered a new way to get the Kandrona he needed to survive. Cannibalism. That's where the website comes in. It is a trap, but not for people fighting against the Yeerk invasion, but for Yeerks themselves. It's through the site's chat rooms that he's able to locate and manipulate controllers into his grasp, where he then kidnaps them, splits the human's head open, scoops out the Yeerk, grinds it into a powder, and eats it. Joe Bob Finestra is effectively the world's biggest internet predator. Visor 3 doesn't know of this process, and so Joe Bob installed the high security to keep his sibling away from him. I gotta say, I really like Joe Bob Finestra as a villain. He sits outside of the rest of the Yeerks, with abilities the Yeerks don't, and while clearly evil, still manages to bring up interesting moral questions. He's killing innocents, but he's also killing Yeerks and causing strife for the rest of the invasion force. What do you do with this guy? Kill him? Let him live? These aren't questions the Animorphs are really ready to deal with. They're emotionally exhausted and really just want their friends back. So Jake tries to find a middle ground. "Release my two friends," I said. "We'll let you live. We'll walk away. As long as you're in this house, we won't harm you. But I'll tell you so you'll know. If we ever catch up with you in the outside world, that protection will not exist." Joe Bob is in no position to argue, so he agrees, and Rachel and Axe are returned to the Animorphs. They leave the grounds and demorph, though Axe still has the bullet inside him. "See? I told you they'd stay consistent with the can't morph metal thing." While the story is now effectively over, the book continues for a little while with a handful of epilogue-ish chapters. First, Jake goes out into his backyard, and his mom comes after him for a little talk. You know, when I was your age and feeling upset, my mother, your Gram, would always just say, "You don't know what unhappy is. You're just a kid." Like anything a kid would feel would be less difficult or painful than what an adult would feel. That's probably true, I said, not really listening. No, it isn't, my mother said firmly. In a lot of ways, being a kid is worse than being an adult. You have the same things to deal with, friends, temptations, love and hate and all of that, only you don't have the two great weapons that adults have to help them. I cocked an eye at her. What two great weapons? Well, the first is experience. Experience maybe doesn't make you smarter, but it means you can think, hey, I had something like this happen once before, and I survived. Okay, I'll ask. What's the second great weapon? She looked right at me. You are, Jake. Because as your mom, I can look at you and think, aw, man, as bad as I feel right now, as bad as things may be, at least it isn't as bad as being a teenager. While this segment has very little to do with the rest of the book, I love it. I don't believe my parents are aware of these videos, but if they are, I love you guys, but all those times you pulled the whole grown-ups have a worse shtick made me want to pull my hair out. It's so refreshing to see something aimed at younger people that says, yeah, things can suck when you're an adult, but that doesn't change the fact that things suck right now. The second epilogue deals with Jake tracking down Cassie to Gump's school, where Cassie poses as a magic-talking wolf to tell Gump to not talk to his father. I told him not to go to that chat room again. I told him... Her lip quivered suddenly. I told him not to talk to his father about Yerks. Told him not to... Her voice was strangled. She gritted her teeth and squeezed out the last few words. I told that little boy not to trust his father. There were tears running down her face. I guess they were running down my face, too. One of the things Cassie and I share is that we trust our parents. Unlike some people, I guess. What a terrible thing for me to do, Cassie said. What a filthy, disgusting thing for me to do. The third and final epilogue is the news that Joe Bob Finestra's mansion has burned to the ground, meaning he is no longer protected from the Animorphs. While the book does not confirm who started the fire, it's implied it was either Jake or Cassie. But really, the only person we know for certain who didn't start the fire was, of course, Billy Joel. Post-book follow-up. Again, it's great to finally have a solid character-building book for Jake. This really should have come sooner. It brings Jake's feelings towards his responsibilities as a leader to the forefront. Also of note is that Cassie is written wonderfully in this book. The book drops any mention of her usual Greenpeace/PETA/vegan pander and instead focuses on her compassion and understanding of human emotions. She's the only one that can break Jake's shell because she's attuned enough to her own emotions to understand others. And while her computer rants were a bit annoying, she didn't come off as a moron. This is how she should have always have been written. This does seem to come at a price of making Marco a bit more stupid than usual, but then again, none of the other Animorphs really get any time in the spotlight here. It's very much a Jake and Cassie book. It's books like these that we really see how Jake and Cassie complement each other, which tell us why these two are so close. I really wish Joe Bob Finestra had become a recurring villain, but his brief appearance was memorable enough. The biggest problem I have with this book is that it's formatted a little sloppy. The pacing fluctuates, and we end up focusing on airline bathroom hijinks for too long and the strife among the group after Rachel and Axe are captured for not long enough. This would be a big problem if the book was longer, but at 150 pages, it's not too bad. Still, a very solid and a very needed book. I give Animorphs number 16, The Warning, an 8 out of 10.
10001 1001